Hello and welcome back to F1 Rolling Start, the loudest, boldest, most outrageous podcast on all things F1. Because, man, we were in Austin, Texas this weekend, and it did not disappoint, Benjamin.
We were in God's country. We're in America. You know, here's the thing. I have fallen in love with F1. You have as well. And God, I love, Monaco. I love the sleek. I love the ships. I love just the history. But at the end of the day, the race is a bit of a parade. There's not a whole lot of overtaking. They can't.
No. And here's the thing.
They're too tiny. They're too tiny.
F1 made itself an American-sized company when it decided to make the cars 2 meters wide and 5 meters long. Yeah. That is as big as a Suburban. When was the last time you drove a Suburban through Monaco?
Well,
when was the last time you tried to get? I was in Italy in a tiny SUV, yes, and I felt like I was in an Escalade.
Yes,
I literally had my mirrors hit driving down the street by people yelling at me. These F1 cars were going 2, 3 wide at some of these corners in Austin. It was perfect. It was absolutely unreal.
It was a phenomenal race, sprint weekend. There's so many things. We're going to get into all of it. But first and foremost on top of my mind is the team that didn't bring any upgrades.
Come on.
Prancing ponies,
the Ferrari,
freaking come in and sweep it. Obviously, Max wins the sprint, but Chuck runs away with it. You've got other teams. You've got McLaren. I was pretty concerned.
Yeah.
You've got Mercedes. You've got Russell coming from the pit lane.
Pit lane start to P6.
It was insane. Out. It was an incredible
Lawson coming in on his debut weekend for the team, outscoring Yuki Tsunoda.
You got Franco getting points. You've got Hulk getting points. It was a great weekend in Texas.
It was phenomenal. What a way to come back from a 3-week break.
Oh, it was fantastic. We had drama all the way until the end. It was exactly the shot in the arm you need after you've got this is the weird thing about this break. It's not a summer break.
No.
Because they're all working lights out. But it feels the same thing for a fan where you're like, this is such a long period of time to be without the actual races. And so
it's a long period of time, but they were putting the work in. And I mean, Red Bull came with a fully upgrade. It felt like a whole new car.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, except if you were Sergio, he was driving a Visa Cash FRB, scrapping it out.
Yuki was beating him, racing him. I was like, wait, Sergio, Yuki wants your seat next year.
Incredible.
How are you losing to this guy?
The most hilarious part was on the track walk when they were talking about Sergio. They said Sergio feels more comfortable with the car. He says he's feeling really good with the car. And then they go up to the next slot on the grid, and it's a Haas. And you're like, okay, so he's comfortable with the car, but Haas still outqualified him. I mean, what are
Speaking of Haas, I mean, they showed up.
We're excited. We're all over the place. But let's start with the 1-2.
We have to sink in here. You want to start with Ferrari?
I want to start with Leclerc. I want to start with Carlos. I mean, Carlos... To me, I thought he was going to win this weekend.
Yeah. Well, I appreciated Carlos because Carlos at this point, obviously he's going to Williams next year. Mm-hmm. It's a bummer in some respects because you want to see him at a top team. Williams isn't a top team. They're scoring points and they're getting better. But
for sure,
at this point, Carlos, his one client, his one focus is himself.
100%.
It's I've got to go out there and race lights out. And so in the sprint, he put it on. In the race, he put it on. It was incredible just to see him go at it.
Yeah.
And I thought they were going to race all the way until the end. Chuck was too far ahead for them to actually be competitive at the end. But I was really happy to see Sainz challenging Max.
Yeah.
Sainz was taking it to everybody.
He was the great supporting act of this weekend.
Yeah.
He played the role perfectly. I mean, there was a bit of a scare in the beginning because all of a sudden he's on the radio going, "Hey guys, I smell fuel."
I was waiting for his car to explode.
I was like, are we going to see a fireball?
Like, no, stay out there, Sainz. You're not on the team next year. Stay out there. You're
exactly. Fine. Stay out there. Everything's fine. And they come in and then they tell him to change some adjustments on the steering wheel. I'm like, whatever. But he comes through. He nailed it.
Yeah.
1-2. He did. But it was the Leclerc show this weekend. Leclerc said to the world, I am the right driver. They picked the right one to stay.
Yeah. I mean, and this is a little crazy too. And Crofty mentioned this at the end. Ferrari had a 1-2, and we didn't see them almost the entire race. It's because it was so dominant. It was so locked in that we just... It
was like Max last year. No one watched him.
No one actually watched Ferrari, but they literally ran away with it. And so really happy for them. At this point, it's a 3-way race.
Freddie's got to be going ear to ear. Oh. He is grinning ear to ear. He's pumped. It's a 3-way battle.
They have the opportunity still mathematically to go for constructors, technically.
I mean, they're 100%. We came into this weekend saying it's between McLaren and Red Bull. We're coming out of this weekend, and Red Bull and Ferrari are 8 points apart.
Dude, Ferrari right now is at 496. McLaren's at 544. It's super
close.
Within
one DNF and they're done.
Oh,
if Lando or Charles or Sainz or Norris have a weekend like Sergio does every weekend, then they're gonna be in trouble.
I mean, it's incredible. We're at this point in the season, legitimately a 3-way race for the constructors, and Ferrari just crushed, and it did it in such a way that we didn't even see them doing it.
Yeah,
we were so focused on Max, so focused on Lando, so focused on races further back, and so and this was without upgrades.
Totally.
We had a disagreement about this because I was listening to some podcasts leading up to this.
Liars.
Where this is, these are the F1 folk, right? Who are saying, oh no, every team's bringing upgrades.
Right.
And Ferrari doesn't bring in upgrades.
Ferrari did not bring an upgrade. They did an upgrade in Monza, a massive upgrade package. They did a slight upgrade on their front wing in Singapore. But this weekend, they were the ones that came in without a massive upgrade package, and they quite literally dominated. I mean, Charles ended not a little bit ahead, way ahead of the competition. And it was an incredible weekend. I would say not only is the Constructors' Championship on the line, it's a long shot. But theoretically, Leclerc is still mathematically able to win the World Championship title. And Vettel was the one that said, if it's mathematically correct, never give up.
Yeah.
And this weekend for him to be P1 and Max and Lando to be 3 and 4 respectively, that is a huge chunk of points.
Yep.
Max pulled out a 5-point lead on Lando, pushed it even 5 points further ahead. However, Leclerc ate into Max's and Lando's lead by a massive chunk this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, he was 8 seconds ahead of Sainz, and then Sainz was 19 ahead of Max.
That's nuts. I mean, that's 2024. That's 2023 style.
Yeah.
Red Bull.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
There are a couple caveats. Number one, Red Bull has not been up to snuff the last few races. They've been floundering.
Yeah.
We don't know what they look like. They're kind of like just pulling on whatever lever they can find, hoping that it worked. And Max made it work again. But I mean, Sergio didn't.
No.
And the other thing is, this is not a track that McLaren was expecting to be good at. You have massive high speed into super low speed corners, and they're not, their cars, that's just not them. That's not what they do. So they weren't expecting to perform here. So part of them getting P4 and P5 is actually kind of encouraging.
Yeah.
Because they did pretty good for not doing great. If that makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, Checo.
No, buddy.
I don't want to shift to Red Bull at this moment, particularly. I want to, try to stick with Ferrari a little bit longer. But Red Bull continues to have just a gap between their two drivers. You look at Ferrari, 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
You look at McLaren, 4-5.
Yeah.
You look at Red Bull, and it's 3 and 7. And that was 7 because Checo was getting stuck behind the likes of Yuki. He was racing folks in the back pack, and he couldn't actually get past them. And so
100%.
That is when we talk about Red Bull, we talk about them floundering a bit. It's their two teammates haven't been on the same page.
No.
Haven't been operating at the same level nearly the entire season.
Well, Red Bull went from being untouchable to they were completely rattled this weekend.
Yeah.
Max held on to third only because he's Max, not because of that car.
And that's just his MO. He's
the only saving grace. It was a rough weekend for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, he won the sprint race. I get that. But we're not talking about Visa Cash App RB. We're not talking about Williams. We're not talking about any of these teams that would be happy to be up there.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Red Bull, the ones who dominated literally historically last year. And now they're kind of floundering.
Well, yeah. And also it is almost a guarantee they shift into third place in the constructors with the momentum of Ferrari, with the consistency of both of their drivers.
Yes.
At this point, Ferrari looks to overtake them in the next race.
Yes.
Because they're just more consistent than Red Bull is. And so Red Bull goes from P1, looks like P3 is inevitable.
Right.
And at that point, if Checo barely kept his seat last year just because he got P2 in the drivers, does he keep it if Red Bull shifts into P3 in the constructors? Is it something where...
I don't think Checo's keeping that seat.
I don't think he is.
I think we're done.
I'm like, wait a second. Yuki?
Exactly.
You're racing Checo right now?
His race was a slow motion train wreck.
Yeah.
An actual slow motion rain trap. Gosh, why can't I talk? An actual slow motion.
It's late. We're dads.
Train wreck of a race. It was awful.
Yeah.
He upgrades to the car. His pace was garbage.
Yeah.
He was not there. He was not competitive.
And Liam comes out and gets points.
In a Visa Cash App, oh gosh. In a Visa Cash App RB, the guy came out in qualifying and he was P3 in Q1. Yeah. And the only reason why he didn't keep pushing is because he had a bajillion engine penalties from Danny
he
Rick
had a 10-place penalty because
he was at the back of the grid.
And he comes out and scores points. So, I mean, I think if he is accelerating, if we see him actually scoring points consistently, I don't see how Checo's
the weak link. In their title push right now, he is the weak link.
He's the reason they are going to lose P1. Well, they've already lost P1. He's the reason they'll lose P2. The only reason they're not going to lose P3 is because Mercedes is too far back.
And this comes back to my comment earlier. They're floundering.
Yeah.
They are in deep water and they have no idea how to swim because the Red Bull of old would have never been this indecisive.
No.
Would have never been this reactionary. They are the people who make the hard calls, make the tough changes, and historically thrived because of it.
Yeah.
The things that people were like, how could you ever do that? They would be like, this is cutthroat. And with Checo, they've got the kid gloves on. I don't know if it's because of his popularity. I don't know if it's because of his sponsorships that he brings. I don't know if it's because of his influence across North America. It's just why they keep him. But I know for a fact it's not his driving.
Yeah.
Do we have another version of Lance Stroll on our hands here?
I've never thought of it that way. Wow. Lance is in the seat because of his connections.
Yep.
Not because of his talent. So if there's any driver who's in the seat because of what they're doing off track as opposed to what they're doing on track, then yes. So Danny, we loved Danny, and he was in his seat, I think, for as long as he was because of all the connections he had.
100%.
And at some point, Red Bull's like, yeah, we love you. No,
100%.
So, yeah, I mean, if there's any driver who is in that seat and it's not based on merit, then you shouldn't be here. It's the Lance Stroll effect.
It's the Lance Stroll.
If you're there Not because you're good
It's the
enough.
LSF. It's the Lance Stroll effect.
Not because you're good enough, but because you've got all these connections and then let someone else in. Because again, these F2 guys are coming in.
They're crushing it.
Lights out and scoring in their 100% maiden races. And these are guys who weren't even winning in F2.
No.
They're not the champion of F2. They're just in F2 and they weren't even having it. Like you think Ollie Behrman, you think Franco, you think Liam Lawson.
Yep.
I mean, these guys are ready to go. And so it's one of those things where it's score points, win races, or get out of the cockpit.
Get out.
Get out of the cockpit.
Get out. Like, I've loved watching Franco come in and crush.
Oh, I mean, it was like, it almost gives like, I would think if I'm Sainz, it would give me some hope. I was like, oh, Williams, you can actually score points in that car?
100%.
Score points in that car?
It's incredible.
I mean, he's kind of showing up Albon a little bit.
I mean, not a little bit. A lot of it.
Showing him up. We're all over the place.
Let's talk Maxi Poo.
Let's talk Maxi Poo. He wins the sprint.
Well done, Max.
Well done for Max. That's great. But the sprint, I mean, Oscar won a sprint, and we didn't actually consider it his first race win until he won his first.
The only reason why it was important that Max won the sprint, number one, he hasn't lost one this year. I think that's the 6th straight sprint he's won.
Yeah.
The other thing is it furthers the gap between him and Norris. That's the only reason why it was important. 100%.
Yeah. But I mean, he wins a sprint. The race is a different story. Him and Lando get in a scuff at turn 1, and Chuck says, "Thank you very much," and runs off with the race essentially at that point. That was the moment.
Yep.
Really where it all went sideways. Max started complaining about the car having, some issues. And then Lando caught up to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lando quickly caught up to him and then couldn't pass him. And then when he finally goes to pass him, and this is where I got real frustrated because he goes to pass him, and the rule apparently is if you are ahead at the apex.
It's a very relative term. How do you define apex?
Croxy's like, yeah, what is apex?
Exactly.
What does that mean?
Well, what one driver's apex is to another driver's apex is totally different.
Like, what is apex even defined as a word? But if you're ahead at the apex, then if you go into a corner and you run wide, you're not gaining a position by going off the track.
Right.
If you're ahead. The way that I saw, I'm not sure if you saw it this way, Lando appeared from my eyes to be ahead.
Yes.
He goes to make the turn. Max just pushes him off
completely.
And then goes off the track himself.
Yeah.
And then Lando continues and he's ahead. And he gets a 5-second penalty.
Yeah, this is where it gets confusing for me because one of the other rules is that you're supposed to leave a car's width length.
Yeah, Max did not do that.
And Max did not do that.
No, but
coming around the corner, it's very hard because obviously
you're bringing
the laws of physics are pushing the car out, and the line is to go as wide as possible.
Of course.
But when you're overtaking somebody, the only place to really overtake them is around the corners. I mean, Lando was within 0.3, 0.5, 0.6 seconds pretty much for like 3 or 4 laps consistently and could not overtake Max on the straights.
Yeah, and that's where you see Max's, skill as a driver.
100%. Max was, and that's my one note about Max this weekend. He's metronomic. He
really is
abundantly consistent.
He's like an Oscar Piastri, or Oscar Piastri is like him,
just with a lot more words. Yeah, and
yes.
And you can't fault him. I literally was watching the race today and I go, I've got to admit, he's one of the greatest of all time.
He is.
He is one of the greatest of all time.
Such a good driver.
And it pains me to say, but he's really good. And Lando was trying to race him like anybody else on the track.
You can't.
And you can't. And because of that, Max, he's kind of got that Alonso Wile E. Coyote vibe to him where he's super strategic and smart. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, okay, I know. Yeah, come around the outside. I'm going to force you around the outside because I know that if you can get alongside of me, I'll just push you off track and you can't overtake me anyway, even though you have the pace. As soon as he got in front of Max, he was gone. He was 3 seconds ahead within 3 laps.
Yeah, he finished
one
4
more
seconds
lap
ahead,
and he would have finished 5 seconds ahead and his penalty wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
But Max knew that. Max knows Lando, knows how Lando's been racing him, and was like, I'm just going to force him wide.
Yeah. And that was the frustrating part of it. And I am a Max fan. I've been a Max fan since day one. But it was still frustrating for me because I want Lando to push Max in the way that Max pushes Lando. And Lando's not there.
No.
Max can push all the right buttons. He's really strategic. And he understands the rules. And so I think exactly what you're saying. He knows, oh yeah, sure, I'll just push you wide. You'll get the position. But it's one of those things where it's subjective enough to where you're going to have to get it back, or you're going to get the 5-second penalty. And I'll just make sure that I don't finish 5 seconds behind you. And so I think for me, really brilliant racing on Max's part, really frustrating because you want Lando to have overtaken and made it stick. And I hate when the rules get in the way when it's this subjective.
The frustrating part to me was, okay, so he pushes Lando wide and he remains on track. I get that. I took the racing line. Lando couldn't get it done within the time frame. Okay.
Yeah.
The problem is that he couldn't get the racing line because he purposefully braked later so that Lando couldn't brake later than him. They both went off the track.
Yeah.
And Lando's the one that gets punished because of it. But that's not in the rules. The other option is he brakes and makes the corner. Had he had actually made the corner, Lando legitimately braked later than him.
Yeah.
Would have been able to still cut in front of him and make the corner. But that didn't happen because Max was like, I'm just going to brake as late as possible and I'll just kind of go and I'll barely make the corner, but didn't make it at all. And Lando's the one that gets punished. The other hard part is that I hate laws. I think you should have less laws, not more laws. So
just blanket statement.
That's a blanket statement. Absolutely nothing to do with my political stances, but has something to do with the fact that more laws make it more complex, and then I have to have more stewards, and stewards don't make anything fun. And so, let's put it to the stewards. The worst.
I hate it. I mean, those rules seem ambiguous enough. It's like I was watching baseball, and my team lost to the Yankees, who I hate. There's no other team in sports I hate more than the Yankees. Full stop, period. But there's this one moment where the ump calls a strike when it's clearly a ball. And the announcers make a statement. They're like, well, that's just the dynamics of the game.
Oh, what a cop-out.
They're like, human error is part of the game. An umpire at moments is going to call a strike, a ball, or a ball, a strike. And it was in like the bottom of the 9th inning. It was such a pivotal moment, right? But it's the same thing. It's the bottom of the 9th inning. Lando finally overtakes Max, and then the umpire is like, 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So anyway, but Max finishes on the podium, still finishes ahead of Lando.
I'll just say, okay, but before we go on, one more thing about the stewards.
Sure, please.
The hard part for me is that it's so subjective.
Yes, it is.
They're all humans.
They are.
Some of them were race car drivers. Some of them have worked for Formula One teams. If you come on, it's a recipe
I know.
for just people's proclivities.
Yeah.
You got someone that worked for Ferrari 30 years as a steward. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
this is out of control.
These folks, they're human. They have preferences. I like to tell my wife I'm not picky. I have preferences.
Yeah.
Tricky. These guys have preferences, right? Like, and you can't eliminate that from a human being because they would stop to be a human if you did. So.
That's very true. But let's jump into McLaren.
Yeah.
P4, P5, Norris. Norris comes into this weekend hoping to overtake Max points-wise.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
And that did not happen.
And Max beat him twice.
He wanted to take a bite out of Max's lead, and Max took a bite out of his tail.
Yeah. Pretty frustrating for Lando. He has 2 opportunities to go up on Max. Max in the head-to-head beats him twice. So at this point, we're not getting to the point where it mathematically is out of reach for Lando to win. But
no, he came into the weekend needing 9 points a weekend to outscore Max by. Now he goes into the rest of the races needing like 10.5. It's not mathematically impossible.
No.
But it's statistically unlikely.
It's more and more unlikely. And at this point too, like, momentum is a huge thing, right?
Yes.
You always talk about, like, do everything you can to get momentum because that's such an important thing. And this weekend, like, McLaren finished probably ahead of what they thought they would, but they didn't get that type of momentum. Like, Ferrari got momentum in spades this weekend. McLaren's walking away. Yeah, they've got, 4 or 5, but Lando didn't take the bite out of Max that he would have liked. Now, they still, I think, scored more than Red Bull purely because Checo was so far back, and they're still
Checo is their saving grace.
Oh yeah, no, they're like giving him raises on the
side. Yeah, they're giving Checo money. They're like, hey, can we sponsor you?
We sponsor you? And they're still 40 points ahead of Red Bull.
Yeah,
which is great for them. But yeah, I think momentum wise, as far as the championship fight goes between Lando and Max, momentum is still with Max, very much so. Oscar kind of seemed like he wasn't really
it was a boring
around this weekend.
He said it was boring.
Yeah.
He said he had enough pace to stay ahead of those that were behind him, but not enough pace to take it to those that were in front of him.
Yeah, it was one of those like cars where they finish and you're like, oh yeah, you were racing too, because the TVs never really get
100%.
To them because they're in kind of no man's land.
Yeah. He quietly bagged P5. Norris is the guy with the headlines right now because he's got the penalty drama. He's the one that's in the closest fight with Max for the championship. But, man, I don't know if Norris has that killer instinct, that great white mentality that the greats have. Like, not very many people liked being around Michael Schumacher.
Yeah.
Senior.
That's what I've heard.
It wasn't comfortable. It's not comfortable to be around Alonso.
Yeah.
Vettel was extremely volatile in his early days. Kimi Räikkönen was a stone wall.
Yeah.
There were Lewis Hamilton, as surfacey kind guy he is. When push comes to shove and he's on the radio.
Yeah.
You heard it this weekend. He snapped at Bono for talking to him in the braking zones. These people have killer instincts.
Yep.
And
you're not going to win if you don't got them.
You're not going to win. Norris is trying the same tactics on Max, and it's not working.
No.
And I don't know if he's aggressive enough to get Helmut Marko actually said it. I don't know if Lando has the bite it takes to be a world champion. And this weekend, the guy was so nervous that Max was going to overtake him. He compromised the first corner to the point where Ferrari, Max took the whole race.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately comes down to it. It took Max a minute to beat Hamilton. And I think if Lando can pull it together, that's going to be the same story. I don't think he's going to get him this season. He doesn't. I don't think he has it. As much as we all want it to come down to a fight between Lando and Max at the end, I just don't see it happening. When Max finally got to that season where he beat Hamilton, I mean, this was when they're crashing into each other. They're taking each other out. They're freaking going over top of each other. It was two demigods
100%.
duking it out. And we've seen some of that aggressiveness between Lando and Max, but at the end of the day, Lando, I don't think has developed that killer instinct in the way that these other guys have.
100%. And we also can't. It's not all on Lando. It's also on McLaren. McLaren placed P4 last year, which sounds pretty good, but they were 100 points off of Ferrari and Mercedes. They were the top of the mid-pack last year. And now they're leading the Constructors' Championship against who?
Well, Red Bull.
Red Bull, who dominated it last year. They had 860 points. Their closest person was Mercedes at 409.
Yeah, it's insane.
Less than double. This is crazy. And Ferrari, who's been in Formula One since Genesis, like it's like Adam and Eve and Ferrari.
Yes.
That is the story of Formula One. And so then you have McLaren, who was there a long time ago, but most definitely not recently.
Yes.
They are punching above their weight. Their internal mentality, their way that they run their team, all of it is in catch-up mode. Like they have the big mo right now as a team, but not only are they desperate to keep it, they kind of don't know how they got it. Like they are firing on all cylinders, on all 12 cylinders, and they thought they had 8 cylinders. Like they found something special here.
Which is awesome when a team does. And it's also something that a team has to learn how to live with.
Exactly.
And so I think we're seeing McLaren learning how to live at the front and learning how to lead the constructors in that way. And so there's some weekends where they've been crushing it. As a whole, across the entire season, they've been doing really, really well. But you see a team like Ferrari, no developments, come out and is, lights out, away we go, and just never looks back. And so, again, they are ahead, but they cannot get comfortable.
No.
And that's where that bite comes in. That's where that killer instinct comes
100%.
in. Is if you're going to be at P1 in F1, you've got to be ferocious. You've got to have that and I love McLaren. I love that they're doing it their own way. I love that they're saying, no, for the longest time this season, we have 2 number 1 drivers. It's like, okay, like I love that you're doing this.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's cute. But you're number 1 now in the most cutthroat sport in the world.
So make some cutthroat decisions.
So I'm hoping they can hold on to it in their own way, but they may have to get a little meaner than they're used to. And we haven't really seen them get mean like that. Yeah. They've not gotten mean like a Max. They've not gotten mean like a Hamilton. They've not gotten mean like an Alonso. And maybe that's why Lando's not going to win this year.
Yeah. I think my fear with McLaren, because I'm a big fan of McLaren.
Yeah, they're great.
And there's a great saying that is like, when you experience success, you've got to know how you got there so that when it breaks, you can fix it. Yeah. And I think my fear with McLaren is that I don't know if they fully comprehended how they got here.
Well, yeah, because they made a huge jump over, the top 3 teams.
Insane.
In one season.
In one season.
That's unreal.
And so when it breaks, do we know how to fix it? And I think we won't know that. I don't know. We might see it this season. I think they'll duke it out. But next season, as we start with a blank page, we will truly see how McLaren is doing in this new era of Formula One.
Absolutely.
Let's jump to Mercedes. What a tale of disaster.
Hammy.
Okay, let's back it up before Hammy, because
you can back it. Go for it.
Let's talk about qualifying.
Yeah.
Russell qualifies P3 and crashes his car.
Yeah.
So he starts from the pit lane. Mm-hmm. Hamilton has a mechanical failure during the sprint race. Or qualifying. I can't remember which one it was. Basically, they had to replace part of his front suspension, and he wasn't happy with the car setup and the balance after that.
Yeah.
So he had a really bad sprint race. And then
he was P6 or something like that?
A real minimal points and a really bad qualifying to the point where he qualified P19. It was Guan Yu Zhou in 20th, Hamilton, 7-time world champion, in 19th.
Yeah, pretty stunning.
And Valtteri Bottas. So it's been like the days of old. Valtteri and Hamilton back together.
And
then the race starts. He was livid. after qualifying.
Yeah.
And he was all, his happy-go-lucky self on Sunday morning when the race came around. And all of a sudden, 6th lap, just loses the rear end, spins out, beaches the car. He's done. He's out of the race.
Out of it. First time that he has not finished one of the Grand Prix in America.
Ever.
Yep.
It was the first time that he had qualified out of the top 5 at COTA, which was nuts. Then you have Russell starting from the pit lane.
Yep, because they had to rebuild his car.
Rebuild the whole car underneath Parc Fermé. So he was done.
He's done.
The dude finishes P6.
Which
what?
And he doesn't pit until the 41st lap, which is almost at the end of the race. And he still only loses 2 spots. He pits and he's in P6. He comes out, he's in P8, and then he gets back into it. And so this was the other thing that I wanted to bring up when we were talking about Red Bull. Red Bull this weekend lost to McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes. Now, Max, obviously, with the 5-second, penalty, beats McLaren. But as a team, Russ beats Checo, and then obviously everyone else beats Checo because he's so far back. And then the Ferrari boys, and technically Lando, beat Max. And so it's very interesting to see them as a team lose to all of their rivals in different ways. But no, Russ, unreal racing. This guy can just extend stints beyond what you'd think would be possible.
100%.
How are you going 41 laps?
The guy's a tire whisperer. It's insane.
Unreal.
It's insane.
This reminded me of was Austria, where he's like, I'm just going to go the whole way. It's like, wait a second. You're gonna what? Yeah, that's right. I'm just going the whole way.
Yeah, except he didn't get disqualified this time.
Yeah.
I think Hamilton spinning out on lap 2, uncharacteristic. You can blame the wind. You can blame the dirty air. But we're not talking about Liam Lawson. We're not talking about Guan Yu Zhou. We're not talking about Logan Sargent. Remember him? We're not talking about
R.I.P.
We're talking about a 7-time world champion who won his first world championship in 2008. This guy's been around the block. This was a rookie mistake that you would not. And this is Hamilton. I mean,
this is your boy.
This is my guy. You know what I'm saying? But Russell, the one-man recovery show.
Unreal.
It's insane. From pit lane to P6, I'm filled with hope as a Mercedes fan for next year after this.
Did he win driver of the day?
I don't know who actually won driver of the day. I'd have to look it up because that really doesn't mean anything.
No, it doesn't. I mean,
Mercedes has got some fight with him.
Yeah.
Even if it's all grit, they've got fight.
They really do. Russ, he's in the same caliber as the Landos, as the Chucks. He hasn't won as many races as them.
No.
But that was because of where he ended up initially when he got into F1, which was Williams.
Exactly.
Which was bottom feeding territory. So, Russ is a fantastic driver. It was great to see him really and it was also sneaky. Like, you didn't really realize.
Oh, he was just
where he was
his way through the field.
And then you at one point, you're like, wait a second. Okay, he's going to fall down because he, pits so late in P6. He's going to come out in P10, and then he only drops a couple places. It was great to see him do really well. And he redeemed points for the team with Hamilton, especially crashing out the way that he did. So.
Yeah, I think the overall vibe for Mercedes, though, is that they just really can't catch a break.
No.
New upgrades, same problems. It is inconsistency is just killing them.
Yeah, I mean, and they're stuck in P4. They're going to end the season in P4.
Do you think that they've quit on this season? Do you think that they're just at this point, they're writing it off and they're looking towards 2025?
Well, they have to. You have to, because
they're not catching Ferrari.
You're not catching anyone.
Or
You're
Red Bull.
Too far back. They're over 150 points back from Ferrari. Mathematically, it's impossible. And also, you're losing Hamilton, and you're getting a new driver. So at this point, I don't know why you would still be wanting to really focus on the season, because you're not going to get any more money from the constructors. Like, you're locked into how much you're going to get. So give your team the best car they can, but you really should be focused on next year.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not racing anyone. They're not racing anyone right now.
No, I agree with you 100%.
So it's like, okay.
We're gonna shift out of Mercedes and talk about another team. But before we do that, we have to talk about how we rank the order of which we talk about teams before we talk about this team, because we rank our team order in which we discuss with you in finishing order. So even if a team, for instance, Red Bull, Max finished third, Checo finished way further down.
Yes.
But they get talked about in third position because that's the highest finishing position for the teammate. So we've talked about Ferrari.
Yes.
We've talked about Red Bull.
Yes.
We've talked about McLaren.
Yes.
Mercedes.
Yes.
That's the order you would think it would go. You would think those 4 teams would be there. The next team we're going to talk about is Haas. The underdog at the Austin Grand Prix. The first time ever have I watched their home race and been like, this is what I'm talking about.
Love these
This
guys.
redeems the worst rendition of the American anthem I heard during the pre-show I have ever. Don't pick a choir. Like, look at the Super Bowl from last year. Go get Chris Stapleton and say, just run it back, bro. Make everybody cry.
Yeah.
But here we are with Haas. I mean, Hulk, Mag, they were both in it this weekend. It was amazing.
It was incredible. Yeah, I mean, Hulk finished a couple seconds behind Checo. Incredible. Hulk.
That is insane. Hulkenberg in a Haas finished a few seconds behind Checo Pérez.
They are a different team.
The Minister of Defense in a Red Bull. That is crazy.
We haven't called Checo the Minister of Defense in a while.
Yeah, but it sounded more dramatically a flair. You add the flair.
I know. He has lost rights to that title this season, but no.
He's the administrator of defense now. He's the assistant to the administrator of defense.
Yes.
Poor Checo.
Dude, Haas has turned the page.
Yeah.
The best thing they could have done was get rid of their team principal. Steiner.
That sucks to say, but
which is the terrible thing to say, because
but can you say that because everyone says the first year of a team principal's actual role is only ever a rollover of the previous principal's organizational structure. But I think AO has been running that team so differently.
Yeah, but he also had a significant role in the team. It wasn't like he was coming from a different team and just inheriting.
No, he was within.
He was within, and so he already had his fingerprints, I'm assuming, on a lot of the elements of the team.
No, you're right.
So, but no, I mean, the environment of that team is different.
Yeah,
it just is, and they're scoring. They are competitive.
100%.
They are
They're
now
beating
in
Williams.
6th place, right behind Aston. They're not going to catch Aston, but it's very possible they finish in 6th.
100%,
which is incredible. I mean, it is akin in a lot of ways to a McLaren-like jump.
100%.
McLaren jumps from 4th to 1st. Haas jumps from 10th to 6th. I mean, and they're ahead of Visa Cash App. They're ahead of Williams. They're ahead of Alpine. They're ahead of Kick, but everyone's ahead of Kick, so that's not a huge success thing. But they're doing incredible.
They weren't ahead of Kick last year.
It's a different team.
It is incredible. I mean, Hulk is scrappy.
That guy should have waited to sign a contract.
He is outsmarting. He is outsmarting everybody. I mean, the one-stop strategy, he is officially Haas's insurance policy.
Dude.
Hulkenberg is beyond the super sub. He is a legitimate Formula
a super
1
sub at some point.
Race car driver.
That's so weird to think about. Like, these guys who sit on the bench, who are out of the spotlight, you kind of forget they're there because no one really knows who the super subs are, unless you're like Schumacher, who's standing behind Toto just to make sure that like his face gets in a shot at least once a race. But these guys, you don't really know who they are on the team. And Hulk just pulls it out and is legitimately scoring big points.
Yeah.
beating legitimate. I mean, I hate to say legitimate. Like, I feel like Haas had been written off for so long because of their internal turmoil, because of all the struggles
100%.
they've had. And I'm bummed he's actually leaving the team.
So am I.
Because I don't think he's going to score these kind of points next year.
No, I mean,
because he's going to kick.
No, it's we don't even want to talk about it.
I wish he would stay on the team.
The only note I have on Haas is that they need to stop teasing me with double points finishes.
I know.
Magnussen was so close.
Mag's not as consistent.
He was so close.
I love the Viking, but he's not as consistent.
It's like the one last hurdle that they keep stumbling over is a double points finish. And I mean, Haas is grinding it out in the midfield.
Oh yeah, they're doing.
They came into this season saying we're going to finish 10th again. They're in 6th, not 9th, not 8th, not 7th, 6th. Not by a lot, but they're still in 6th.
They're still
and
there.
That's all that matters. They are beating Red Bull's sister team.
Yep,
that's crazy.
Yep,
they're not just beating Kick. They're not just beating Williams.
They're beating France's flagship team.
I didn't even list Alpine, but yes, they are.
Hang on a second. As we're talking about Haas, Ocon is going to be a Haas driver next year. I am so upset about that. I try to be like the chill one on this podcast.
I could have been a Haas fan.
Jacked.
I could have been a Haas fan until they did that.
I get so jacked about that. Hulk, give that guy all the money he wants and keep him on your team. If you're gonna have Ocon, Ocon's going to destroy Ollie Behrman's first year.
I love that on this podcast. We went to the Las Vegas race last year, and the announcer would always say instead of Esteban Ocon, he would say Esteban Ocon. And now on this podcast, we've just completely made his last name Ocon, which is the least French word I have ever heard in my entire life.
Chuck and Ocon. No.
Chuck and Ocon. Oh my gosh. I can't believe he's going to be a driver for them next year. I don't even want to think about that because honestly, I'm pumped about Haas right now.
Yeah.
They just signed Toyota as their technical partnership, which is huge.
Incredible. They weren't able to sign partners for the longest time. I mean, it was like,
bro, they have money, Graham.
I know.
A company that keeps people poor.
Yes.
It's brutal. Yes. And Chipotle.
I know.
Like,
they literally are the American team. And all the American sponsors are like, we're going to McLaren. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Literally saw T-Mobile as a new sponsor of McLaren. And I was like, dude, you're in one country.
Have a team in America.
You're in one country. Well, I guess they're in Deutschland too. But that's not the T-Mobile that sponsored you. Please.
No.
Anyway.
But no, Haas is doing incredible. I want to just hold on to all the good feelings this year because next year I feel like
it's going to tank.
I feel like it's going to tank for Hulk. And Mag still doesn't have a drive.
Well, Mag gone. He's not going to get. They're not going to take him on it. The only seat that's open is Kick, and they're not taking Hulk. I can tell you that. They're not going to push him up for. They're not going to push off Bottas for Hulk.
No,
it's not going to happen. Okay, so let's talk RB. Lawson
came in,
delivered,
had all those penalties. He scored. It was good. Mixed feelings. Obviously he took Danny Rick's spot. And
not his fault, though. Lawson didn't do anything to get Danny Rick's.
It's no one's fault, right? I mean, Danny Rick,
when
he came in, he kicked someone out to get their spot. So, I mean, it's how these things work because it's so competitive. So it's not Lawson's fault. It's just how the Red Bull ecosystem works. But, yeah, I mean, he came in. There was zero expectations. No. Red Bull said there were, it was a soft landing because he had a 10 grid place penalty because of, the changes of the car. And it's a good soft landing for him. Don't have a ton of expectations. And Lawson, he was talking to Tom on his podcast, and Lawson's like, no, there's always massive expectations.
Exactly. 100%.
So he's like, yeah, it doesn't change. It's just That's soft landing. And so he came in and he got points. It's fantastic. Good for him.
He delivered when it counted.
Yeah.
His first race back, straight into the points.
Yep.
He's done what no one has managed to do consistently as Tsunoda's partner, which is outscore Tsunoda.
Yeah.
Tsunoda
was back in 14th.
The last person that was genuinely competitive with Tsunoda was Gasly. Everyone else is pretty much, including Lawson himself when he raced for them last year.
DeVries was in there at some point.
DeVries was in there too. Danny. They've all been kind of in that Tsunoda realm of performance. No one's really, they've kind of been neck and neck.
Yeah.
Even. And he comes in first race back and shows them exactly what it is. I thought the main flex for Lawson was during qualifying. During Q1, he was third fastest on the grid. Yeah. The guy knew he was starting at the back because of every one of the 27 penalties Danny left him. And
a nice going away present.
yeah. No, you can have my seat. Here's 27 penalties.
Yeah.
And he starts from the back. So he comes out in Q2 and he just basically slipstreams Tsunoda so he can get through, which he doesn't. And the dude then comes through the race and dominates. He did an incredible drive from the back of the field. And Tsunoda got a real crap hand. It's like when you're playing poker and you get like a 7 and a 5 and you're like, what do I do with this?
How is this possible?
Like, this is offset 7 and 5. Like that's what Yuki got today. Like it was not good in any way, shape, or form. He couldn't catch a break. He went backwards from the moment he started.
Yeah.
And the 5-second penalty for him was just a nail in the coffin. He spun towards the end of the race. I mean, he was pissed. It was like Yuki of old. It was not a good day for Mr. Tsunoda.
Yeah, there was no happy Danny to offset him.
No.
It was just angry.
It was just angsty Tsunoda.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point in the constructors, they've essentially caught Haas, which for a minute it looked like Haas was going to run away with it, and they are very much back in contention. And 6th place is actually incredibly doable at this point.
Yeah,
especially if Liam continues to score points, and if Yuki continues to score points, he's scored points quite a bit this year as well.
100%.
So, yeah, I mean they're locked there. Like Williams isn't going to catch him. And neither team is going to catch Aston. So it really is down to
it's them.
It's Haas and it's Visa Cash App. And they are racing lights out
and Kick
into the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Kick should stop being an F1 team. They should just sign off, say it was nice. It was an honor. We're going to make space for Antonelli and we're going to bow out of this and get out of here.
We should talk about as one of my new favorite drivers.
Who?
My wife called him Pinto this weekend because
Franco. Let's go.
Hey, Franco, get over here. I love calling Pinto, dude.
This guy.
The dude is the silent assassin.
Dude.
Picking off points everywhere he can.
10th place. I was like, wait a second.
That is the like dubbed by the Queen status at Williams. Sir Franco Colapinto.
If you can score points in a Williams this year, I have completely forgotten about Sargent.
Yeah, who's that?
Because I mean, when you realize, oh my God, there's so many incredible drivers in F2 who are just gunning to get in, and guess what? They're better.
They can perform
than some of the guys who are already in there.
100%.
And so Franco came in and has just performed.
Yeah. Imagine
really
if you put Franco in an Aston Martin.
Don't even get me started.
Not Alonso's. But imagine if you put him in that'd be pretty amazing. He was a silent assassin. Albon had a pretty rough day at the office.
Yeah. Albon, it's interesting. I feel like he was the big man on campus when his teammate was Logan Sargent.
100%.
They would give Albon Logan's car and say like, hey, Logan, sorry, dude, but Albon's, our flagship driver here, and we couldn't care less about you. So here, we're going to give you his car. And now
I almost said something that would have caused us to censor this.
No,
podcast.
please don't do that. But literally, dude, I feel like not the momentum has shifted, but Franco's got some energy he's bringing to the
100%.
team, and I don't think he's intimidated by Albon whatsoever. And I'm interested to see how the rest of the races go. But Franco's holding his own on that team right now.
100%. Albon had a rough day, and that's uncharacteristic for Albon. Let's be
Albon's
real.
a great driver.
He's good. And I think for Williams, the hard part for me is that I believe they should be further ahead than they are.
Yeah,
it's just that their performance is a yo-yo. 1 week it's good, 1 week it's not. 1 week it's good, 1 week it's not. And so until they can figure out how to get out of that consistency struggle they're with.
It's just a sophomore slump? Is that what it is?
I'm not sure. What?
Sophomore slump. You ever heard about this?
No.
It's some folks will come in and their rookie year, they'll just crush it, right? They're like, stats are bonkers. They come in, they've got something to prove. And then they hit the sophomore slump where it's like, James Viles right now. It's his sophomore slump.
Ooh.
He came in, crushed it. He was the big man on campus. And now it's like, you've got to deal with all like just the stuff that's happening and actually trying to do the hard work of leadership and of turning the Titanic around. And that's what he's doing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think one great result followed by a struggle isn't going to cut it where they are in the midfield.
Yeah.
And so until they figure out how to bring the consistency, that's why you look at McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, both their drivers, neck and neck, consistent.
Yep.
You look at the Red Bull and you go, ooh, we're not consistent. We're not neck and neck. It's a yo-yo every week.
Yes.
It's dependent on one driver, not a team.
Yes.
And so I think Williams is getting into that place, except it's not about their drivers. It's about what the team gives their drivers every week. Seems to be so different.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's unique because it's actually not what the rest of the field looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that Williams won championships at one point.
Many. They're one of the greatest teams ever. Think about that for a second.
I mean, yeah, it's stunning.
It's been a while.
I mean, yeah, unreal. So it's crazy to think of them in that way because that's never been obviously, our experience with them. So can I just say this real quick before we shift from Williams?
100%.
How is it that our boy Franco doesn't have a seat next year?
Well, I think he's in hot contention for the one seat that's left, but does he want that seat? I think. Would you go to kick or would you decide to be a Williams reserve driver next year? Think about the options you would have. There's a lot of people going into 2026 that will be out of contract.
Yeah, I mean,
Red Bull's seats up next year. If they kick Checo out, put Lawson in.
Bump Lawson.
But there's a V-carb seat. They've got a lot of people in the...
They've got so many folks in their own pipeline, though.
But none of those folks have proven themselves in F1. Colapinto, it's not like he's good. He's been excellent.
This guy can freaking drive. The fact that there's folks on the grid who he's beating, who are going to still retain their seats is really frustrating.
People's can't actually, in the Formula One world, they actually can't comprehend how good he is.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that
no one expected
the fact that Ocon is going to have a seat and Franco is not,
it's depressing.
I just want to rage against the machine and be like, guys.
But that's James's fault for holding on to Sargent for too long. That's not Franco's fault.
No, of course it isn't.
This is Franco's one shot. The hard part for me is that the ruthlessness of Formula One. This could be it for his entire life.
You hope not. The guy's got to do a Liam Lawson boomerang
or a Nico Hulkenberg.
He has to. The guy's too good. We can't let him go like that.
He'll be a reserve driver. I have no doubt about that. They might even bring him on as Mercedes reserve driver.
Should.
He's on the Williams
Get
family.
Rid of Schumacher.
Schumacher is the definition of mediocrity, according to James Fowles.
Out.
So we should
Franco in a Mercedes jumpsuit.
I think you could see him as a Mercedes reserve driver for sure.
Yeah.
I think he could take Mick's place. But that would be We won't know that until mid-November when Matteo makes the decision in regards to what his driver lineup looks like for next year.
Yeah.
But I would bet all the money in mine, yours, and Joshua Jones's pocket over there that
I have $5. So.
I have 40. Jones, nothing. $45 that Franco is in Matteo Binotto's Rolodex for these next few weeks. And he will be in those phone calls for sure for that last seat. Why wouldn't you? Yeah. Alpine actually did something noteworthy this weekend.
I wasn't paying any attention to them. So,
well, you don't because
I don't care about them.
They were on the field looking like a McLaren, which was interesting.
Yeah, they were like yellow.
Because they had an Indiana Jones themed yellow to orange ombre, terrible livery.
It was bad.
Gasly started strong, but he faded fast.
Yeah,
great qualifying for them. Showed some pretty good promise.
Yeah. No, he was in Q3.
Yep. But they sabotaged themselves again.
Which is why they're...
When will they learn?
It's just who they are. They're done. He was 12. Ocon was 18. And that's all she wrote.
And then Ocon comes out and gets fastest lap. I mean, dude, the definition of a consolation.
It's like stop. Just stop.
It's the definition of a consolation prize.
Teams I just get upset even talking about because they're so dysfunctional. I'm like, why am I going to like give you airtime to talk about your dysfunction?
Why did you stop and pit to get the fastest lap? You're in P16. Do you know what that means? You get nothing. You get absolutely nothing.
It doesn't matter. This guy's, no. I mean, until they figure themselves out, they're lost in the sauce. And I've got nothing for them.
They're spinning their wheels, like literally and figuratively.
They just make me upset. I don't know why. I do know why. Because they are the definition of dysfunction.
They're middle school cafeteria mashed potatoes.
It's so much drama. It's so much dysfunction. It's like, what are you doing?
You're powdered eggs. Like, you are so disgusting. You look like you should be good, and you're trash.
You're not. So until you figure yourselves out, they
might be the one team that if they invited us to a weekend, I'd be like, actually, I think we're good. I wouldn't, but at the same time, if
Kick invited us, I'd be like,
okay, we'll go.
Alpine, they've got 13 points. They're 4 back from Williams. They could mathematically catch Williams. I don't think it's going to happen.
The crazy thing is they finished in front of Aston Martin this weekend. They finished the amount of times I saw Fernando Alonso getting overtaken.
Yeah, I don't know where Aston was at.
Out of control.
We'll just shift to Aston right now. I don't know what's going on with it.
They're MIA.
They brought an upgrade too.
What? What did they bring?
They shipped
a new helmet.
Upgrade.
Yeah, they brought new helmets and shoes for the team.
They're like, we have a new helmet.
Hey, check out our new polos that all of our mechanics.
It takes off a 1/10 of a second.
Oh my gosh!
No, but also Aston's making me upset. Yes, they've got Adrian. Love Adrian. It's fantastic.
They don't have him yet.
No, he's on his way. He's signed. So they're making these strategic long-term decisions, which is great, except for 50% of their drivers. And so I continue to be so angry when I think about them. I don't have anything to say. I don't have anything good to say. My mom always said, you got nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. And I think that's how I am with Aston right now. What do they do this weekend?
Nothing. No, nothing.
Okay, great.
Stroll's restart sums up Aston's whole season. It's a flash of promise followed by amateur mistakes. They need to get it together, and they need to get it together fast.
Done with this.
They're done. Actually, they don't. They could just not show up to the rest of the races, and they'll finish exactly where they are for the rest of this year.
Yeah,
it's depressing.
They're not going to catch Mercedes in 4th, and they're not going to be caught by Haas, who's in 6th. So they're going to finish in 5th. They've got the curse of Mercedes right now. Mercedes is going to finish in 4th.
Exactly.
They're going to finish in 5th. These are the 2 teams that are not racing anyone. They're stranded. and they're stranded because of their own mistakes.
Yeah.
They're stranded because of their own judgment errors throughout the season. And that's just what is going to happen for them. So,
yeah.
It's
just depressing. Like their team principal Crack said it was a very difficult weekend. Yes, it was a very difficult weekend. But do you know what? This is a very difficult season for you because you've gone from podium hunters to almost never there's.
Yeah.
Like, who are you?
This is a hard sport. This is a difficult sport. Like every weekend should be a difficult weekend. And you should be fighting tooth and nail to get back to where you were.
The only saving grace for Aston Martin is that for the first time in, I think, 16 races, Bert Mylander was able to go out in the Aston Martin safety car and take a few laps in the Aston Martin Vantage, which, by the way, looks amazing. I want to drive that car so bad. I want to drive it more than the actual Formula One car that Alonso and Fernando are driving.
The one perk.
That is all that was exciting that happened out of Aston Martin this weekend is that we had an Aston Martin safety car. That pretty much sums up the whole season.
Yeah.
And just like the safety car, they've been MIA.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating when you see teams with so much promise make decisions and fall away from that promise. And so,
like we're talking about a team that last year was one of the most entertaining parts of the 2023 season.
Alonso was going to win a race.
Alonso going against...
He was going to win a race.
Like down to the milliseconds, taking P2 away from Pérez.
Him and Max qualifying in Monaco. Do you remember that?
Bro, screw Monaco. Remember Brazil? Brazil was when him and Pérez were down the final straight on the final lap. Like it was something out of a flippin' Steven Spielberg movie. Like it was like J.J. Abrams eating his heart out. And now we're talking about they were the second worst this weekend. Yeah. The only team that did worse than them, the only team was Kick.
Yep.
Aston Martin and Kick.
It's really sad. The two green teams. One green's way better than the other green, but still.
Yes.
Yeah. And Kick, I mean, do you have a lot of notes on Kick?
I can read you all of my notes. Bottas had the patience of a saint.
Bottas?
Managing those hard tires for 40 laps for no reason. It was
Bottas
so
deserves
depressing.
Better. Bottas deserves better.
Bottas deserves so much better.
He deserves a better team. He deserves a better car. He deserves all the
Zhou made rookie mistakes. I mean, he spun out.
Yeah, he's done.
Sauber, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
Why are you here? And then I saw Matteo Benito this weekend, however you say his name, Matteo Benito, Banana. He was in this way too small Kick Sauber polo shirt in the Kick lane, talking about how all of the upgrades they have, they're not expecting any performance increase. And why? I was just watching going, why are we even talking to you? And the only question they want to ask you is who's going to be in the seat next year? Not because they care, because it's the only seat that's left. It's the only thing.
Gosh.
It's the only it's just, why are you here? I hate having to end on them. Can we just end on something funner than Kick every time?
No, because in your sequencing, this is how it works.
I'm flipping it halfway through. We're doing this up and down the river style.
We should do that. Yeah, we should do like first, 10th, second, 9th.
We don't have
and we
that
should end in the middle. So we're ending in a mediocre.
Yeah, we end on mediocrity. It's better than lameness. Yeah. Kick. I mean, they're done.
They are.
But overall,
it was a good weekend.
The Austin race was phenomenal.
It was a great weekend. We are in the Americas. Next race is in
Mexico City, followed by Brazil. Wow.
Then we have Vegas after that, right?
I don't know if that's right after.
I thought it was after Brazil.
Jeez.
We could fact check that.
Come on. America, baby. Here's the thing. I think what we've learned this weekend is that out of the 24 races that they're wanting to do in the Formula One calendar, at minimum, 20 of them should be in America because we have the space to create great racing. You've got these European countries, which are the size of my suburb, trying to pull off races with cars that are too big. And I just think like
Monaco
everything
is smaller than your suburb.
There's exactly with the world that we live in. Let's just admit it. America does it better. I'm still waiting for Europe to produce the Avengers. I'm still waiting for anything to come out of Europe that's better than what comes out of America. How many French hamburgers have you had? None.
No.
How many disgusting English beers have you drunk? Too many. America does everything better. And so let's just bring everything F1 to America.
I mean, we do have 3 races now in the US. So that's something.
No, but think about this for a second. I'm being kind of serious. Like,
just make it an American sport.
Well, because everyone says that Monaco, like you can't lose Monaco because it's the jewel of the crown. Okay. Agree. Do you know what we have in Vegas? The Eiffel Tower.
It's a replica.
Do you know? 100%. Do you know what else we have? We have a pyramid. Okay. You can take Monaco, increase it by 20% and build it with some flipping solar panel fields in Arizona. You can have your Monaco race right there. They could dig a hole in the ground and you could park a couple yachts out there just to make yourself feel good. We can do everything better here. And I think that's what we learned. Sure. We have the space.
I mean, it was a fantastic race. I always love Texas. I always love when F1 comes to Texas because there's all the American just culture and
the hoopla,
all that gets built into it. I'm excited to see the rest of the races we've got on this side of the pond, as it were. What's your predictions for Mexico?
Oh man, I don't know. Mexico.
It just feels like it's just rolling the dice.
Yeah, the high elevation really throws it.
Is Checo going to finish the race this time, or
Ferrari and Ferrari did really well last year. I will say it will be between Ferrari and McLaren. I think we'll go Leclerc for P1, Lando P2, and
Checo P3.
No. No, Sainz P3. I think it'll be a little be a little McLaren sandwich. No Max. No Max next month.
Okay.
Next week. What about you?
Yeah, I mean I think Chuck P1.
Really?
Yeah, Chuck P1.
I love that.
I think I'll actually go Max P2. I'll do Lando P3.
Wow. Bold.
But ours are always right. So
literally not once.
We're always right.
Well, thank you for joining us this week as we talked all things F1. Appreciate your patience while I learn to talk. And Absolutely. If you're still with us, join us on our fantasy league, which Ben is crushing at because he's adjusted
out
it since
3
week
months ago.
2.
So I don't know where I'm at.
Yeah, Coach Jones's picks is in the room with us right now, and he is not doing as well as me because I am crushing life because I'm invested in the things that I decide to say yes to. You can follow us on Spotify, iTunes, and subscribe on YouTube. Y'all are awesome. We'll see you next time.
See you, folks.